Welcome to Leonard Stories, where every story touches the heart. Mira found a recording on her phone, her own voice whispering names, ending with her own. But she never pressed record. Then she noticed her husband's signature had been forged. That night, Jonah stood at the doorway, half asleep, murmuring, "It's your turn now, Mira." Mira Ashland, 28, lived with her husband in a suburban apartment. Every morning, she had the same routine. She turned on her computer to check email, then made coffee. But that morning, when she turned on her phone, she found a strange recording file. The file was saved on Tuesday morning. Mira opened it. It was her voice. It didn't go anywhere. Her breathing, her way of saying her name. But Mira never turned on the recording at night. In the recording, she heard her own voice reading each name, all of them, until her name. She gently turned it off, her heart pounding. Just then, Jonah, her husband, walked out of the bedroom. He was 3 and 2 years old, the operations director for the charity Bright Loom. His shirt had traces of blue ink on the cuffs. Mira asked, "What did you just sign? Why is your hand in blue ink?" Jonah paused for a moment, then replied, "Just regular paper, don't worry." Mira didn't say anything more, but she remembered this detail in her mind. Jonah always used a black pen, never changed. During breakfast, the phone rang. Ophelia, her mother-in-law, called. She didn't ask much, just reminded, "This weekend's meeting is very important. Remember to choose warm-colored outfits. People like it better." Mira had to open her email. A thank you letter from the children in the countryside appeared. The last signature was Jonah's name, but the handwriting was old and water-splattered, like he had written it when he worked in the factory with his father. It was not the same as Jonah's signature now. Please save the letter in a secret folder. This was not the first time she had kept mismatched details to herself. That afternoon, she met Ria Tran, an old friend. In the cafe, Mira told everything. The recording file, the strange signature, the original stamps. Ria listened silently and then whispered, "Send it to me. If it's really a forgery, someone is working on a script." At night, Mira saw Ophelia standing on the porch, having just turned off the phone. She looked at it and asked, "Is Jonah tired these days?" "He's been sleeping less," Mira replied. Ophelia nodded, then said coldly, "Don't worry. As long as you know how to smile at the right time, everyone will sign." That night, Jonah fell asleep and spoke immediately. Mira opened the recording file again, to the end, when her voice called her name. She felt alive. No more duplication. Someone had touched her life. Mira opened her laptop, entered an old security code known only to her and Ria. She sent Ria the letter and the list of unexpected expenses. A few minutes later, Ria texted back, "These letters are all scribbled together. These are not real thank you letters." Just then, Mira heard footsteps in the hallway. The door to her room opened slightly. Jonah stood there, his eyes half closed, as if in a trance, whispering, "It's here, Mira." She sat still. The fear was there. There was a noise, and it was starting from within her own home. The next morning, Mira woke up earlier than usual. She didn't say anything to Jonah about the night before. He still made coffee, still opened his laptop to read the news as if nothing had happened. But Mira saw that the blue ink from yesterday had disappeared, and his shirt had been replaced with a new one. In the kitchen, she tried to ask, "Did you dream about something yesterday? I saw you walking out into the hallway at midnight." Jonah was startled for a moment, but immediately smiled. "I didn't. I must have dreamed it." Mira was silent. She knew she wasn't wrong. At noon, when Jonah went out to work, Mira opened her laptop and checked the thank you letters. She searched the common mailbox of the fund that Jonah often used. Indeed, there were dozens of letters with almost identical content. Only the name of the support recipient and the location were changed. Mira secretly printed a few copies, folded them up, and put them in her bag. Before she could put them away, she heard the door open. Jonah had come home early. Mira quickly closed her computer, pretending to be cleaning up some papers. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Nothing. Just reviewing some old contracts." Jonah looked at her for a second longer than usual, then nodded and went into the bathroom. Mira took a deep breath, her heart still not calm. That afternoon, she met Ria again. They sat in a small cafe, a table in a hidden corner. Mira handed out some printed letters. Ria looked at them carefully, frowning. Same template. Even the punctuation is the same. This can't be a handwritten letter. Mira asked quietly, "Who do you think did it?" Ria replied immediately, "Someone in the fund. Or there's a whole group behind it. But the important thing is the money. These letters were definitely used to legitimize the flow of money." Mira felt a chill down her spine. She had long suspected Ophelia's control of the foundation, but never had clear evidence. Now the pieces began to fit together. That night, as the couple ate dinner, Mira tried to probe further. "Do you think Mom is too involved?" "I'm afraid she controls everything." Jonah put down his chopsticks, his eyes darkening slightly. "Mom does it for the foundation. Without Mom, I can't keep this place. Don't doubt it." The answer made Mira fall silent. She understood that Jonah was no longer objective. Maybe he was bound, or there was something else she didn't know. Late at night, when Jonah was asleep, Mira took out her phone and played the recording again. She listened very slowly, each breath, each word. There was a brief moment before reading the last name. Mira clearly heard the wooden door creak, as if someone else was in the room. She jumped up, looked around the apartment. All was silent. But Mira knew that what was happening was not her imagination. There was another hand intervening in their lives. And if she did not continue investigating, perhaps the last name whispered, hers, would come true. On Monday morning, Mira excused herself to stop by the Bright Loom Foundation. She told Jonah she wanted to help him check the paperwork before the fundraiser. Jonah was a little surprised, but didn't object. He handed Mira his visitor card and said, "Only in the administrative area. Don't touch the accounting records. They contain sensitive information." Mira nodded, smiling as if nothing had happened. Inside the office, everything was neatly arranged. The walls were covered with charity photos. But when she sat down at the visitor desk, Mira noticed a stack of unsent thank you letters. She pretended to flip through them. The contents were identical to the previous ones. The only difference was the recipient's name and the date. A young employee, wearing a name tag named Hannah, walked over. "Are you looking for something?" Mira looked up and smiled. "Oh, I was just looking through the thank you letters. Were they pre-written?" Hannah was a little confused, then quickly replied, "Yes, the pre-made form. Then fill in the name, to save time." The answer made Mira pause. She knew that charities usually received real handwritten letters, not templates. But she did not ask further. At noon, when Jonah went out for a meeting, Mira took the opportunity to go into the photocopy room. On the table were several unfiled transfer statements. She glanced quickly. A large sum of money was transferred to a medical equipment supplier in Eastern Europe. But the address was non-existent, just a series of mailbox numbers. Mira quickly took a few photos and put them back in their proper place. As soon as she left the room, she ran into Silas North, the man from the day before. He was wearing a gray suit, holding a cup of coffee, his eyes scrutinizing. "Miss Ashland, right? You came here today too?" "Yes, I just stopped by to help Jonah with something." Silas smirked. "It's good to help. But there are things you shouldn't look too deeply. Sometimes knowing less is safer." Mira stood still for a second, then nodded, walking away. Her hand in her pocket tightened on her phone, where she had saved the evidence photos. In the evening, she met Ria at the familiar coffee shop. Ria opened the photos, looking at each statement. "Mira, this is not an accounting error. This is money laundering. These companies are not real." "Are you sure?" Mira asked hoarsely. "Sure. The way they did it was too obvious. Moving through many layers, finally returning to their own other accounts. If you want to expose them, you have to be well prepared. They won't let you off the hook." Mira sat still, her heart pounding. She remembered the whisper Jonah had blurted out the night before. "It's your turn, Mira." Now she understood. It wasn't just a vague statement. Maybe Jonah had been caught up in this game for a long time. On the way home, Mira stopped the car on the side of the road and took a deep breath. She knew she had just stepped into a vortex, and from now on, every gesture, every look in that house could be a warning sign. That night, the Grand Boston Hotel was brightly lit. The Bright Loom fundraising party was held in a luxurious atmosphere, with guests including businessmen, officials, and reporters. Mira walked next to Jonah, wearing the crimson dress that Ophelia had suggested. Her smile was forced, but no one noticed. Ophelia appeared in the crowd like the real hostess of the event. People gathered around, shook hands, and took pictures. Jonah followed behind, just like the good son she always wanted to be. Mira stood next to her, observing every little detail. The way she shook hands, the way she nodded, the way everyone looked at Jonah while actually only listening to Ophelia. When the program began, the MC invited Ophelia to speak. She spoke clearly about her achievements, about the hundreds of children she had helped, about the trust of the community. The audience applauded loudly. Mira kept smiling, but her eyes were fixed on the projection screen behind her. The enlarged thank you letters. Mira's heart sank. She recognized one of them as the one she had saved earlier. Same content, same punctuation error. Only the child's name and location were different. She whispered to Jonah, "See what? This is exactly like the one from the other day." Jonah turned around, his voice low but firm. "Don't make a fuss, Mira. This is none of your business." "It's none of your business. I signed it too." Jonah looked at her, his eyes tense, then turned away, clapping along with the audience. While everyone was raising their glasses, Mira left the table and walked out into the hallway. She needed to breathe. There, she caught sight of Hannah, the young employee, fumbling with a box of documents that had fallen out. Mira bent down to help. In the stack of papers, she saw lists of donations, many names repeated with the same amount. Mira asked softly, "Why did so many people contribute the same amount of money?" Hannah was embarrassed and answered softly, "Probably, don't ask. Mrs. Bush." Ophelia said to follow the available template. A cold sweat rolled down Mira's spine. This was the most public evidence so far. When she returned to the auditorium, Silas North was standing next to Ophelia. He did not speak, just stood behind Jonah, placing his hand on his shoulder. Jonah sat up straight, his eyes empty as if someone had pressed a button. Ophelia raised her glass, saying the last sentence of her speech. "We not only call for faith, but also preserve it. Smile at the right time, do the right thing, and everything will come true." Mira listened with a surge of emotion. She knew that if she did not act, she would be drawn into the script they were preparing. As the party broke up, Ria texted Mira, "I just checked. The 2 companies listed for tonight's donation don't exist. Be careful. Don't let on that you know." Mira's grip on her phone tightened. She looked up. Ophelia was laughing. Jonah was still clapping. Silas was standing like a shadow. And she understood. The party wasn't just about raising money. It was about tying Jonah and herself into a dark web. After the fundraising party, Mira pretended to be tired and left early. Jonah intended to stay with his mother and entertain more guests. She did not object. On the way home, Mira had only one thought. There must be clear evidence, not just based on feelings. Back at the apartment, Mira rummaged through the files Jonah had kept in the wooden drawer. She did not dare to turn on the big light, only using a small desk lamp. Among the messy pile of papers, Mira found a few old statements, with the money transfer marks East Care Supplies and Nova Health Logistics. The names sounded so real, but when entered into the search engine, they did not exist. She took a photo of each one and sent it to Ria through a secure channel. Less than 10 minutes later, Ria texted back, "Confirmed. This is a ghost company. They were set up to legitimize the withdrawal of money." Mira sighed, her heart still beating fast. She knew she had just touched the most dangerous part. About an hour later, Jonah returned. He gently opened the door, walked into the kitchen, and saw Mira still sitting there. "You haven't slept yet?" He sounded surprised. "I'm waiting for you," Mira said, trying to stay calm. Jonah glanced around the table. Luckily, Mira had put away the file. He just smiled, then went to take a shower. Mira sat still, feeling like she had just escaped a small trap. The next day, Mira returned to the foundation with the excuse of wanting to help prepare for the next event. Hannah, the young employee, accidentally left a removable hard drive on the table. When Hannah left, Mira quickly plugged in her USB drive and copied a few files. There were a series of sponsor lists, but more than half were fake or duplicate addresses. Just as Mira was about to remove the USB, the door to the room opened. Silas walked in. He looked straight at Mira, his eyes cold and sharp as knives. "Miss Ashland, how can I help?" Mira turned around, quickly hiding the USB in her sleeve. "Ah, I was just looking for documents about the volunteer program," Hannah asked. Silas walked slowly closer to the table, glancing over the pile of files. He didn't say anything more, just smiled. "Be careful. There are documents, not for outsiders." Mira walked out of the room, cold sweat running down her back. That evening, she arranged to meet Ria at her usual coffee shop. Ria plugged in her laptop, opened the data Mira had just copied. Just a few minutes later, the screen showed Excel spreadsheets filled with data. Ria frowned. More than $3 million transferred overseas in 6 months. Most of it through shell companies. "Mira, if this gets out, they'll lose everything. And if they know I found out, I'll lose it first." Mira replied, her voice choked. Just then, Mira's phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "Don't play dangerous games. We always know what you're doing." Mira gripped the phone tightly, her hands shaking. There was no doubt about it. Someone was watching her every move. Mira couldn't sleep all night. The anonymous text message haunted her mind. She deleted it immediately, but the feeling of being watched was persistent. The next morning, she tried to act normal, made coffee, prepared breakfast. Jonah sat at the dining table, his eyes blank. "Did you sleep well?" Mira asked. Jonah slowly replied, "I had a dream. The same dream as the night before. Someone called my name." Mira swallowed, not daring to ask more. When Jonah went out, Mira received an envelope under the door. Inside was only a photo of her and Ria sitting in the cafe last night. Below the photo was a scrawled line, "We saw everything." Mira sat frozen in her chair. Someone had followed her. There was no doubt anymore. That afternoon, she decided to visit the fund again. In the hallway, Ophelia stopped her. She wore a dark blue suit, her eyes piercing. "Mira, I heard you care a lot about the Foundation's papers." "I just want to help Jonah," Mira replied, her voice low. Ophelia moved closer, lowering her voice. "Don't get involved in things you don't understand. There are things that are safer to keep quiet." Mira bit her lip, not answering. She put her hand on her shoulder, squeezed it lightly, then turned and walked away. As Mira left the building, a strange black car stopped right by the road. The window rolled down. Silas North looked at her, a cold smile. "Miss Ashland, I have a piece of advice. People are often curious, but when they know too much, they often don't live happily. Sometimes, they don't live long." Mira stood still. Her heart was pounding. She nodded slightly, turned away, and didn't say another word. That night, Jonah returned late. He sat down, his eyes strange, empty, and distant. "Did you talk to your mother today?" he asked, his voice stiff. "Just about the party. Nothing," Mira replied, trying to keep her voice calm. Jonah looked at her for a long time, then simply said, "I hope you trust me. Don't let anyone else come between us." Mira pursed her lips. She understood clearly. Jonah was no longer just her husband. He had become part of the game that Ophelia and Silas were setting up. At night, Mira locked the office door and opened her laptop. Ria had sent more data, a detailed list of money transfers. Mira looked at the long list of numbers, her heart trembling. This was the evidence that could overturn everything. But at the same time, it was also the rope that was strangling her every day. After days of constant warnings, Mira understood clearly. If she just avoided it, she would be swallowed sooner or later. She decided to try to counterattack, not directly confront it, but silently, precisely. In the morning, when Jonah went to work, Mira took out her old phone, installed a secret recording app. She tested it a few times, then hid it in her bag. She knew that if she wanted real evidence, she would have to get Ophelia or Silas to reveal herself. That afternoon, Mira pretended to call Hannah, the young employee, to ask about the list of sponsors. The appointment was set in a small room at the foundation. Mira sat waiting, and as expected, not only Hannah came, but Ophelia also walked in. "Mira, I heard you have a lot of questions about the documents." Ophelia began, her voice even. "I just want to understand. These donations, I see the names over and over again." Mira replied, trying to keep her voice calm. Ophelia sat down, her eyes fixed on her. "You don't need to understand. You just need to stand next to Jonah, smile at the right time, say the prepared sentences. That's enough. Leave the rest to the adults." In her bag, the phone was still recording. Mira nodded, pretending to comply, but her palms were sweaty. When Ophelia left, Hannah whispered, "Be careful. People who ask too many questions often disappear from the fund." Mira looked at her, her eyes worried, but she didn't have time to ask more. That night, Mira installed another small camera in her living room. She chose the right position to capture clear sound when Jonah and Ophelia talked. That night, Jonah returned with his mother. They sat in the living room. Mira pretended to go to the kitchen, but her ears were still strained to listen. Ophelia's voice rang out. "You must not let Mira touch the files. If she suspects, I will deal with it." Jonah was silent. After a few seconds, he said softly, his voice hypnotized, "If necessary, I will make Mira shut up." Mira's heart lurched. She almost dropped the glass she was holding, but the camera had recorded everything. When they left, Mira slumped down in her chair, her heart pounding. She now had two pieces of evidence, Ophelia's words and Jonah's own terrifying promise. That same night, Mira sent Rhea a copy of the data with a message. "If I disappear, reveal everything." Mira sat silently in the darkness, knowing that she had just stepped out of the role of silent wife. And from that moment, the game had changed. She was no longer just prey. That evening, the Grand Boston Hotel lit up again. This time, it was the Bright Loom Foundation's financial report announcement, with reporters, sponsors, and government representatives in attendance. Mira, wearing a black dress, walked next to Jonah. She knew that tonight would decide everything. Ophelia appeared radiantly like a queen. She shook hands with everyone, a sweet smile on her lips. Silas North stood behind, his eyes scanning the entire hall. Jonah was tense, his face lifeless like a person who had been programmed. When the program began, Ophelia stepped onto the stage, opening with familiar flowery words. "We are here to witness faith and compassion." Mira sat below, her hand tightly gripping the small remote in her pocket. At the exact moment Ophelia raised her hand to toast, Mira pressed the button. The large screen behind her suddenly changed. Gone was the image of the poor children. Instead, Ophelia's voice rang out, recorded from the previous meeting. "You must not let Mira touch the files. If she suspects, I will deal with it." The auditorium exploded with whispers. Ophelia paled, trying to stay calm. But Mira was not done. The next clip played. Jonah's voice, low and emotionless. "If necessary, I will make Mira shut up." Mira stood up, her voice calm but firm. "This is a charity. Those beautiful numbers are actually dirty money. Here are the statements, the shell companies, the proof of the cash flow. It's all in my hands, and the press, and the authorities." She held up her phone, the screen showing the spreadsheet Rhea had deciphered. Millions of dollars transferred through shell companies. Ophelia stepped off the stage, her face pale, her voice harsh. "Mira, you don't know what you're doing. This is the family business." Mira looked straight at her. "No, this is your cheating, and Jonah's silence. But tonight, it all ends." Silas was about to step forward, but at that moment, 2 FBI agents entered the hall. One pulled out a search warrant, his voice booming. "Miss Ophelia Cade, Mr. Silas North, you are under arrest for money laundering and financial fraud." The The whole auditorium erupted in chaos. Cameras and phones flashed continuously. Jonah slumped in his chair, his face pale. He looked at Mira, his eyes mixed with guilt and fear. Mira approached, whispering enough for him to hear. "You chose silence. As for me, I chose the truth." Ophelia struggled, trying to defend herself, but was handcuffed and dragged away amid the chatter of the crowd. Silas kept his cool, but his eyes flashed with hatred. Jonah was called in for questioning. His eyes were vacant, like someone who had just lost everything. Mira stood still, breathing heavily. The whole room was in chaos, but inside she felt strangely calm. She had done it. The wall of lies had collapsed. When she stepped out of the hall, Rhea was waiting. She hugged Mira tightly. "You did it!" Mira nodded, her eyes red, but her lips curved into a relieved smile. Outside the hotel, the wind blew cold. Mira looked up at the sky, whispering, "Finally, the last name called was not me." And in that moment, the audience must have felt relieved too, that the powerful and dishonest man had finally paid the price. A few months later, the Bright Loom Foundation was dissolved. Ophelia and Silas faced many charges. Jonah was released on bail to cooperate with the investigation. But his career and reputation were over. Mira moved out of the small apartment in the suburbs. She rented a private apartment, simple, not luxurious, but peaceful enough to breathe. Every morning, Mira still looked in the mirror as before. But this time, she didn't need to repeat her name. She knew who she was. In a conversation with Rhea, Mira said, "Silence can protect you for a while, but if you keep silent, you will slowly die in the darkness. Only when you speak out, when you bring the truth to light, can you continue to live." That sentence was later repeated by Rhea in an interview, and it became a sentence shared by many people. There are truths that make you lose everything, but silence will make you lose yourself. Mira sat alone in the apartment, looking out the window. The world did not change after a scandal, but she was different. She had stepped out of the role of silent wife. She had reclaimed her voice, and for Mira, that was enough. Chapter 8. The Face Turn. That evening, the Grand Boston Hotel lit up again. This time, it was the Bright Loom Foundation's financial report announcement, with reporters, sponsors, and government representatives in attendance. Mira, wearing a black dress, walked next to Jonah. She knew that tonight would decide everything. Ophelia appeared radiantly like a queen. She shook hands with everyone, a sweet smile on her lips. Silas North stood behind, his eyes scanning the entire hall. Jonah was tense, his face lifeless like a person who had been programmed. When the program began, Ophelia stepped onto the stage, opening with familiar flowery words. "We are here to witness faith and compassion." Mira sat below, her hand tightly gripping the small remote in her pocket. At the exact moment Ophelia raised her hand to toast, Mira pressed the button. The large screen behind her suddenly changed. Gone was the image of the poor children. Instead, Ophelia's voice rang out, recorded from the previous meeting. "You must not let Mira touch the files. If she suspects, I will deal with it." The auditorium exploded with whispers. Ophelia paled, trying to stay calm, but Mira was not done. The next clip played, Jonah's voice, low and emotionless. "If necessary, I will make Mira shut up." Mira stood up, her voice calm but firm. "This is a charity. Those beautiful numbers are actually dirty money. Here are the statements, the shell companies, the proof of the cash flow. It's all in my hands, and the press, and the authorities." She held up her phone, the screen showing the spreadsheet Rhea had deciphered. Millions of dollars transferred through shell companies. Ophelia stepped off the stage, her face pale, her voice harsh. "Mira, you don't know what you're doing. This is the family business." Mira looked straight at her. "No, this is your cheating." And Jonah's silence. "But tonight, it all ends." Silas was about to step forward. But at that moment, 2 FBI agents entered the hall. One pulled out a search warrant, his voice booming. "Ms. Ophelia Cade, Mr. Silas North, you are under arrest for money laundering and financial fraud." The whole auditorium erupted in chaos. Cameras and phones flashed continuously. Jonah slumped in his chair, his face pale. He looked at Mira, his eyes mixed with guilt and fear. Mira approached, whispering enough for him to hear. "You chose silence. As for me, I chose the truth." Ophelia struggled, trying to defend herself, but was handcuffed and dragged away amid the chatter of the crowd. Silas kept his cool, but his eyes flashed with hatred. Jonah was called in for questioning. His eyes were vacant, like someone who had just lost everything. Mira stood still, breathing heavily. The whole room was in chaos, but inside she felt strangely calm. She had done it. The wall of lies had collapsed. When she stepped out of the hall, Rhea was waiting. She hugged Mira tightly. "You did it." Mira nodded, her eyes red, but her lips curved into a relieved smile. Outside the hotel, the wind blew cold. Mira looked up at the sky, whispering, "Finally, the last name called was not me." And in that moment, the audience must have felt relieved too, that the powerful and dishonest man had finally paid the price. A few months later, the Bright Loom Foundation was dissolved. Ophelia and Silas faced many charges. Jonah was released on bail to cooperate with the investigation, but his career and reputation were over. Mira moved out of the small apartment in the suburbs. She rented a private apartment, simple, not luxurious, but peaceful enough to breathe. Every morning, Mira still looked in the mirror as before. But this time, she didn't need to repeat her name. She knew who she was. In a conversation with Rhea, Mira said, "Silence can protect you for a while, but if you keep silent, you will slowly die in the darkness. Only when you speak out, when you bring the truth to light, can you continue to live." That sentence was later repeated by Rhea in an interview, and it became a sentence shared by many people. There are truths that make you lose everything, but silence will make you lose yourself. Mira sat alone in the apartment, looking out the window. The world did not change after a scandal, but she was different. She had stepped out of the role of silent wife. She had reclaimed her voice. And for Mira, that was enough.